Myself, hello everyone. My name is Ray Budavari, Senior Staff Technical Product Manager here at VMware. So today I'll be covering a demonstration of NSX Intelligence, our new distributed analytics platform that we've built on top of NSX and recently launched. Okay. So this demonstration is going to highlight the end-to-end visibility and visualization in NSX Intelligence and how easy it is to go from that visibility to an automated security policy recommendation that will apply a microsegmentation policy for an application using the NSX distributed firewall. So we'll basically go from observing and learning to effective policy in a couple of clicks. Moving over to my environment. So this is the NSX System Overview dashboard, the thing that you see the first time you log into NSX. And in this environment, you can see I have one NSX Intelligence node registered. Right. I also have a very basic distributed firewall policy in this environment. So this is the security tab in NSX. And I have basically a single rule for my applications, which is just allowing any traffic. It's just observing traffic across the wire for the purpose of visualizing it. So there's no microsegmentation or granular policy applied. Now, if I click under Appliances, you can see I have an NSX Intelligence appliance deployed, and I can monitor it here in my NSX Manager. And the other point I made before is that we don't provide a separate console for NSX Intelligence. We just project or extend the existing NSX UI to display any screens from the NSX Intelligence appliance. And this is done under the Plan and Troubleshoot tab. So what you can see here is, so this is the Discover and Take Action. There's a little watermark here in the corner for NSX Intelligence. It means this screen is being displayed and visualized from the NSX Intelligence appliance using that data that we've captured, right? And what we're seeing here, slightly smaller environment, a bit more manageable, but what we're seeing are all the groups in the environment. And as I mentioned, that security policy in this case was just allow any. So all the flows are actually unprotected in this environment. We're just learning and observing what's going on, right? We're using it to build a baseline, right? So you can see that, there's no blocked or allowed flows yet. I mentioned that we have that historical data, so we can go, for example, up to 1 month old. Here, I expand to all the available groups, and I'm going to show how we do filtering. So I can then very quickly go from my entire environment to just the billing application I'm using in this demonstration. Right? So I've selected the groups that comprise this application, and I can see the various web, app, and database, or at least I'm hoping we can see, the various groups that make up this application, and also the other related groups that are communicating. So I have a number of other security groups sending traffic to the database. I have a global group, which is actually where shared services like Active Directory are running. So I can, for example, highlight those flows. Here's an example where I'll change to my web group, and I can drill into the individual workloads, the VMs that are members of that particular group. I can also right-click and look on the flow details and look at all the actual flow information, either completed or active. So this is just real-time flow information to identify, all the flows, the ports, protocols, and services behind these traffic flows. So I can very quickly tell my billing application consists of SAP and DB2 components, right? I can see the ports and protocols in effect. I can also click on the workload and now get that context using guest introspection. I can learn the UIDs, operating system information, IP address and tag details of that workload. So I can drill in and just get more information, continue to get more information about my environment. Now the other thing is this is a distributed platform, so I can hover over a flow and get information. And here I'm actually highlighting that my web VM is sending a number of unprotected flows directly to the database. Something that, may be a little suspect, right? But we'll see how NSX Intelligence actually handles this, right? So we can see at the flow level, I mentioned we can highlight flows out to public IPs. So here's an example where we're sending, NTP and DNS traffic out to a set of public IPs, right? The unknown group are IP addresses in RFC 1918 address space. So these are a number of 10 addresses, which could be physical servers or workloads outside of NSX. And again, that was some DNS traffic. All right, so that's kind of visibility, right? We give you this full visibility into what's happening in your environment. Now I'm going to change the view to virtual machines to see the actual workloads themselves, right? And you'll see the same sort of thing. We'll now show you a communication map of all the traffic occurring between the individual workloads themselves. So whether they're virtual machines, IP addresses, or public IPs. So this just gives you another view of the related data. But the other reason for switching to this particular view is that I can now click on this magic wand icon up here and go immediately into a security policy recommendation. So this is where I'm going to start a recommendation, and I'll show you how easy it is using this new capability to secure an application. So we're going to give our recommendation a name, select the VMs that should be a part of this particular recommendation. So these are my web app and database servers for my billing app, right? We can choose, again, how long we go back in time. I like short demos, so I'm shortening the time to just 12 hours. And when we click Start Discovery, right now, NSX Intelligence is going through those unsupervised learning algorithms and analyzing all of the data for the selected workloads to build that recommended policy, right? So depending on how many workloads you've got, how far back in time you're going, this could take a few minutes to run. So we'll refresh. In this case, it's pretty short because it's only 10 workloads. And now the status changes to ready to publish, right? I can now click on this recommendation, and now I can review it, and I can see what our analytics engine suggests is needed to secure this application. And as I mentioned, we recommend firewall rules, groups, and services. So once we've finished viewing, we can see that we're actually recommending 48 firewall rules to allow only the minimum required SAP, DB2, and shared services traffic for this application. So we're able to lock it down based on what we've observed, right? So we'll give this policy a name, right? We can review these rules. We can actually edit them if we feel like we know that we need to change what was automatically recommended. Maybe we want to change a source and destination or add additional hosts in there. Right. In this case, we've recommended 48 rules, and that's in part because there are 43 services, right? SAP is known for opening up a lot of dynamic UDP ports. We've discovered all of that and included it in the microsegmentation policy. So we're not going to break this application if we decide to push this policy, right? Once we're happy with this recommendation, we can click Next. Drag and drop what is a new section in our distributed firewall for the billing application. So we can choose, the precedence. You might have some infrastructure or environment rules that you want to apply first, for example. So we can choose that. Once we're happy, one last chance to review. And then here's what I call the magic button, right? Publish. As soon as you click Publish, we go from recommendation and analytics, or driven by analytics, to effective policy, right? So now we actually sent these rules directly to the distributed firewall. So if we go back to security and distributed firewall, we'll see a new section containing 48 rules that granularly microsegment, right, that allow only the required traffic, and the last rule is to block all traffic, right? It's in progress because we're pushing these rules down to our distributed data plane to all the hypervisors. And once it's up, I can now go back to NSX Intelligence and kind of close the loop for visibility. So we can go back, look at our application again, and see the effect of that policy that we just pushed, right? So here I'm going to, again, just filter to my app, but instead of the view from the last 24 hours, we're going to shorten the view to the last 1 hour so you can see the latest flows in the environment, right?
So I understand that you're going to collect data, and you mentioned that use whatever unsupervised learning, machine learning algorithms in order to classify data, identify relationships, whatever.
Yes.
So now you're able to baseline. How are you actually making the decision then, or the system's able to make a decision, giving you therefore a recommendation to say this traffic shouldn't occur or we should allow this? Because that's going beyond just classifying and adding tags and labels to traffic, which is what ML does. I guess that's the AI piece. I don't know. How does that happen? That judgment call?
Well, I think so. So this is where we have a pretty good understanding of what an East-West security policy should look like. Right, we detect some of those application IDs, and we're able to suggest, for example, this looks like a multi-tier application, and these are the components that should be talking to each other. So, this is that sort of, you could say, those patented or internal logic that we've built into the analytics layer.
So there is a framework in which that's working. It's
Absolutely.
Not just starting from scratch, developing those relationships and whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and again, it depends, right? Obviously, our recommendations will be richer if it does match patterns and something that we know about. Otherwise, we'll provide a recommendation, and you may need to fine-tune it before you decide to push it. But in this case, yeah, it matched a pretty common web app database profile, right? And in fact, going back to my point, this is now the 1 hour view, and we're seeing allowed and blocked flows, right? So if I actually just show you, web to app traffic, right? It's being permitted because that looked like legitimate traffic to us. Whereas if I highlight the flows that were being, that were unprotected before, we actually now see blocked flows from web to database solely because from our knowledge of East-West traffic, that seems suspicious. Again, you may decide before pushing the rules that actually for your environment it's okay. That's how the app is meant to work. But our understanding, based on our algorithms, is that it flags as traffic you would actually want to block. And that's why we recommended that particular policy. Does that help cover?
Yeah.
Thank you. Right. So as I was saying, we're now looking at the effective policy that we just pushed in an entirely automated fashion. And we're seeing allowed and blocked flows. So if I look at flow details, right, we have the older unprotected flows, and actually newer flows are being allowed or blocked based on that new policy that NSX Intelligence created. So this is kind of highlighting to you how not only can we visualize, push policy, but come back and ensure it's effective and actually working as required. Okay, now, after my demonstration, I had a very short additional section that I wanted to cover, which is, I've showed you what we can do today in NSX Intelligence, which I think is already quite powerful, right? We focused on making it easier to implement security. We thought that was a really, a tangible problem, the one that we could tackle and solve immediately, right? But this is a very strategic solution for us. So we're building NSX Intelligence, and we're building an integration in lockstep with vRealize Network Insight to ensure these products complement each other. Yeah, question.
Actually, I just wanted to take just one step back before you get into
it. Absolutely.
Because a lot of this communication is happening within the VMware cluster, whereas typical network monitoring is going to happen maybe on the wire or from upstream tools, right? Is there a way to feed some of that flow data into a conventional NetFlow collector or something upstream that the operators and security people are already looking at?
Yeah, that's actually either you read my mind with VR and I, or Roger might have planted that question, but either way, fantastic. So you were so the idea for us is really that NSX Intelligence, as you said, it's like right at the workload. It goes very deep for the context. That's why, it can do things like provide the recommendations, right? But we also have vRealize Network Insight, which is a broader tool, an operational console that spans across physical and virtual. So it receives IPFix data already and allows you to visualize logical and physical. And the integration we're building is that NSX Intelligence will share our analyzed data with VRNI, so you can get that end-to-end view, right? It can become that networking console. And the same way, it's going to be a two-way integration where vRealize Network Insight will share physical context with intelligence, so we can then start to factor it into our policy recommendations. Like if we push this rule, what does it mean for your physical, the existing rules you may have in physical, right? In addition, vRealize Network Insight already integrates with CMDBs or does some application discovery. We want to leverage that information in NSX Intelligence as well. So in summary, absolutely. We plan on doing that through vRealize Network Insight, which already supports IPFix and already collects that information. Obviously, you could choose to use another IPFix collector. That's a standard capability in NSX as well. But the goal is to build a kind of complete and more powerful integration together. So we're ensuring these two products don't overlap. Right? NSX Intelligence focuses on our kind of context, and VRNI provides that broader physical and virtual view. So I wanted to briefly cover some of the next steps, and that's because, as I said, making it easy to implement security policy, it's a big first step, but it's just the first step for us, right? Today, we support virtual machines. Ultimately, we want intelligence to support, as Yasin mentioned, containers, bare metal, public cloud as well. We're also going to extend, today we collect this information already about application IDs. We want to provide layer 7 firewall rule recommendations and also rules based on that guest context that we're capturing, so identity and processes. In terms of building this extensibility, I touched upon this with vRealize Network Insight, but we're building a two-way data exchange via APIs, a message bus, and UI extensibility. So this is going to allow us to make our NSX Intelligence analyzed data available via a high throughput, low latency, and very resilient data exchange. So we can basically send data to different consumers in real time via secure, authenticated, and encrypted channels, right? So we're building this integration initially with vRealize Network Insight to cover some of those use cases I just mentioned. But our plans are to extend this to other products or potentially even allow customers to consume data via this message bus themselves. If they have their own analytics tools or their own security reporting tools, will be easy to plug NSX Intelligence into them. By the way, just to make it clear, I'm talking about some of the enhancements or where the platform is going, above and beyond the current capabilities that we just saw. I also mentioned in our architecture that we've designed this to be scale out. So we'll be able to deploy multiple appliances in future. So as the environment grows or as new features are added, right, you just scale out the environment and deploy additional appliances as needed. Something we highlighted at VMworld that a couple of features I'm particularly excited about are, firstly, the what-if simulations or dry run. So, you saw how we gave you the ability to review rules in place. But we'll have the idea here is that we're going to have a slider that allows you to actually test the policy, the impact to not only the application itself that the policy is pushed to, but any other applications communicating with that. So you'll be able to visualize and see the effect of that policy. I like to kind of call this the protection against that resume generating event where you push a firewall policy that blocks all communication flow and then you're stuck looking for a new job because you just impacted production, right? This will help simulate and test those changes beforehand, which I think will be very powerful. Similarly, continuous monitoring is very interesting too, because I talked about how applications are dynamic. So, the policy that we saw was the initial policy, right? How should we microsegment and lock down this application? But continuous monitoring will allow us to enable, think of it as monitoring the traffic flow after pushing that initial recommendation and recommending any changes to that policy based on observed traffic. So if, for example, there are new services that are starting on that application or new workloads that look like they should be members of that security group, we will recommend a new or an enhanced policy based on what we've observed. So even more features coming under security policy. Another area of focus for us is security anomaly detection, right? We can use analytics to build a baseline of traffic patterns and behavior on that historical data. So this is where we switch to more of that supervised learning, kind of going back to the ML terminology. So basically, and we can then generate alerts if we see deviations from those normal patterns. So anomalies that we're looking to track will include things like layer 7 or protocol traffic mismatches, where you may be tunneling traffic over different ports, port scanning and sweeping, lateral movement or data exfiltration, spikes of traffic within the data center that look unusual, or excessive traffic drops. Things that look suspicious, we'll be able to flag. All right, so that's anomaly detection and alerting. Finally, we want to be able to do active real-time compliance reporting. So if you have an environment that needs to comply with a standard like PCI or HIPAA, we'll be able to generate in real-time reports on whether your environment is compliant or not. So I just wanted to summarize that NSX Intelligence, it's all about building on the unique context and data we have within NSX to do more with that data, right? This is very strategic to NSX, is getting into the networking and security analytics market, but doing it in a way that we add our value through distribution, right? We're going to leverage the underlying NSX platform and what we do well. And as you've seen, right, we have a strong vision leveraging not only NSX, but the other products in our portfolio and our partner ecosystem to build a hub for networking and security. All right, with that, thank you all very much. I hope you found today's session interesting.